Welcome everyone to a incredible Saturday morning. It's bright and sunny here, and this is the Art Clinic Online. For those of you who have never been to an Art Clinic Online talk, typically what a Saturday looks like for us is we talk to a single artist about their work, and we'll hear about their story, where they came from. And these meetings are recorded, so if you have time afterwards or any time during your after this talk today, you can dive into our archive of all the talks that we've had. This program, Mariana Castronacas, who's here today, of course, and I have been doing this for it'll be 3 years next month, I think. So we have quite the archive of incredible artists featured from the DMV area of all genres and all types of media and all types of subject matter. So something for everybody. And we are already booking well into 2025. And this program is presented to us, was originally from with the state of Maryland State Art Council provided us with funding originally for this program, and it's been since been subsidized and continued with help with people like Montgomery Art Association, who is our sponsor today, and small donations from folks who attend. But over the years, we've given over $7,000 to local artists in the DMV area. So we're really excited that we can throw money at artists because that's what we need the most, right? Yeah. But with us today is the Vice President of Programming, Frank Monsino, who will talk a little bit about Montgomery Art Association and some of the things they have coming up. Hi, Frank.
Great. Hi, Jordan. And once again, thank you for hosting this and having us aboard. We really appreciate it. Um, yes, my name's Frank Mancino. I think some of you know me, and I'm the vice president of programming for the Montgomery Art Association. Um, I'll just by way of kind of general introduction to the group. I'll just tell you a little bit about MAA. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting visual artists in the arts community in Montgomery County and also in the larger DC metro area. So we serve and provide services for artists throughout the DMV. We were founded in 1954. We were incorporated as a nonprofit in 1991. So we're one of the longest running arts organizations in the region. And we have more than 600 members right now who enjoy many opportunities to exhibit their work, sell, and also grow as artists. We have several events that happen during the course of the year. The biggest one that we do that many of you have probably participated in, if you're not aware of, is the annual Paint the Town Labor Day show, and that happens in Kensington, Maryland. It's always highly anticipated. It is a judged exhibition. Features hundreds of artworks and usually draws more than 3,500 visitors a year. Um, MAA also hosts about a dozen other exhibits throughout the year, and we have many plein air painting outings, art themed field trips, business workshops for artists, and we have monthly meetings with guest speakers where it's not unlike this, I guess, where we might have an artist come speak to our membership and tell us about their practice or how they go about their work, or they might do a demo for us, which is always fun to see. We also do, Mariana, you'd asked earlier about figure drawing opportunities. We do also do those. I've been running those for, I guess, about the last 2 years. I picked that up from our previous board member, Alyssa Poma, who had kind of jump started it back when. And most Sundays we have our program, which is called Figure Model Sundays. And we have a model in the morning and a model in the afternoon. It's usually the same model, but sometimes different. And we just have members, and we did open it up to non-members some months ago. So we've got that opportunity for figurative artists in the area to come join us on Sundays. And we are actually in the process of jump-starting that program for the spring. So if you're an MAA member, be on the lookout for those sessions, because we'll be posting those up very soon. Actually, I think our next session will be next Sunday. So we also give back to our community in partnership with Montgomery College Art Foundation. We do provide scholarships to emerging artists, and we also actively participate in local events like the Kensington David Book Festival, Wheaton Arts Parade, and Maryland Day of the Arts. So, um, again, I'm sure some of you on the call are members, but if you're an artist looking for a creative home, or you're just a art lover wanting to support the local Montgomery County art scene, we are a vibrant and welcoming community, and AA is happy um, to have you. And please please join us, or at least come to one of our events. We'd love to have you. So, um, and that's my MAA spiel for today. But thanks once again, Jordan, for having us.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, cool. So just to kind of give a little bit about what we're going to do today, we want some community involvement so that the people that are attending our meeting, if you want to type in some of the questions you have for our artists as the presentation's going, the chat's a great way to do that. At the end of our talk, we have some time. We'll probably do some in-person questions that you may have more specifically for each artist. But if you feel like you need to kind of throw some mid questions for clarification, please do that in the chat. I'm going to kind of talk about each artist a little bit and have a little bit of a conversation with them. We'll actually start off with Nicole Santiago, who is our alumni. She actually did an incredible talk for us almost a year ago today. Nicole, as a figure painter, she's living and working kind of near College of William and Mary. She works there as an instructor, and you can her work to me and you can actually see this in her other ACO talk that she gave for us. But probably some of the most incredible design work for her paintings. You know, it's kind of using the figure and the still life come together, which I absolutely adore and love. Nicole's work and largely is about narrative, loss, and duty, and she is also represented by First Street Gallery in New York City, where I think she has a solo show coming up in the spring.
I'm hanging it tomorrow.
Oh my gosh, I'm so well, thank you for being here. Yeah, she'll be here there in the spring, and which is tomorrow, I guess. I don't know. And you're also up for an incredible prize, right?
Yeah, the
I mean,
Bennett Prize. Yeah, a finalist. Yeah.
oof, that's a big deal. But Nicole, do you want to say anything a little bit more about your work before we move on?
I mean, you were pretty concise. It's narrative, whether or not there's a figure in it, and I think you hit all the keynotes. So
I'm glad I can do that. Can you talk a little bit before we move on, a little bit about using the figure as design, maybe as a source for shapes or even part of the narrative?
yeah, so the figure is always narrative to me. But I think about it on an abstract level too. And the narrative comes, I usually have some idea of the narrative, but the narrative comes as it changes and morphs with the painting. It's like a collaboration between myself and the painting, and then the narrative is like that third collaborator that comes in. It always ends up being some kind of personal narrative, but yeah, the figure is a design element, but also holds a lot of symbolic weight and psychological weight.
And people will notice as we kind of see more slides and more pictures of your work that you use yourself as a model in a lot of the paintings. Can you talk a little bit about what's like using yourself as the model?
Oh, sure. So, sometimes I like to work from direct observation, but it's not always possible, and I'm not a stickler. So if I need to use a photo reference, or if I need to invent, or if I need to use a drawing to do it, that's fine. Mostly, I like things to be in front of me, but like for the one on the right hand side of the screen, I wanted this view of like the viewer being parallel to the floor plane. Like you're looking, like hovering and looking down on this scene to kind of divorce the viewer from the scene, and to not be in the scene with the person. I wanted the person on the floor to be alone, right? So I hired a model to lay in the dress, and then I took a photo of myself and used the drawing from the photo and the color from the figure um, in the the model I hired to kind of put that together. And I so if I can hire a model, yeah, but to kind of stand in, but a lot of times when it's me, if it's not if I can't do it in front of a mirror, then I have to use a photo. I've put stuffed clothes and put them in a situation so I can see how that might look. I have a hard time with the color in a photo. So yeah,
Thanks.
so
Awesome.
painting for myself is a little tricky.
Awesome. Our next artist, oh, it's not transition. Hold on a second. Uh, welcome, Brian. Brian Kadakis is, I think, am I saying your last name correctly?
Credatus.
Redatus, good, cool. You actually share a BFA from Syracuse University, my wife's alma mater.
Oh, okay.
Go
Yeah.
Orange. And then you also have an MFA from University of Pennsylvania, who did not accept me, by the way, which I'm slightly bitter to this day. But incredible
Their
school.
mistake.
Yeah, it totally was. Brian's also a teacher at William and Mary, and you've been teaching there for quite a while, teaching life drawing in specific since 2001. I can't imagine the hours put into a practice like life drawing with so many students over the years. And what I was looking at, Brian's kind of a new artist for me to experience, but there is such an incredible narrative and this emotional response that I get from it. It's kind of like this uh, kind of sense of vulnerability and mortality. And you write a little bit about kind of like, the search for life's meaning in your work. Could you talk a little bit about kind of trying to put larger meaning into a painting using figure or using kind of landscape, for instance?
Sure. First, thank you and Mariana and the other people on the board today for inviting me. It's a really great opportunity to do this. Um, I start out with an idea. I have to be emotionally invested in whatever that subject or that setup is going to be. But I think once you start painting or making a print or making a drawing, as soon as you put a mark on that page, you're an abstract artist. You're engaged with that language and that process. And if the only thing that I'm going to depict is something that I knew in the beginning or something that I could verbalize in words, then I wouldn't do it. Then it wouldn't be worth doing. And I think what gives it that when they work. What gives it that sort of resonance is what the paint itself can do, what the color can do, what the variety of touch can do. And it gives it a meaning beyond what I could state in the beginning when I start the workout.
Wow, that's awesome. Cool. I noticed that you were also a world traveler as well, going all the way to Dublin for some painting experience. Can you talk a little bit about how travel's affected your work?
Well, I was lucky enough after I got my MFA to get a Fulbright, and I moved to Ireland for almost 2 years to Dublin. And what was great, of course, that I was funded during that time, so all I did was paint during that period. And specifically, when I went to Dublin, it was kind of like getting a second MFA in paint and printmaking. I got my MFA in painting and in printmaking. But when I moved to Dublin, the group of people who I met were working at the Black Church Print Studio, which is this really great print studio in the middle of Dublin. And so for 2 years, I was really immersed in printmaking. And that had a big impact on me and what I ended up doing professionally. And, I've had several different artist residencies at different places in the United States and abroad. And I think those really small, concentrated times of working, a concentrated period like that of 2 weeks or 2 months, you can travel across what you would normally do in a year or two. And so those times of travel for work have ended up being really important for me.
Fantastic. Thank you. Let's see our next artist, Susan O'Neill, teacher and I guess we call it teacher resident artist at the Art League in Alexandria, right? Give or take. Yeah, cool. Susan is a University of Michigan and graduate. She's also done work at RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, and the Corcoran as well. And like I said, she's at the Art League, but also has done work at Art Students League in New York City, which we've had actually a few people who've done work at Art Students League talking at the Art Clinic online over the years. Bennett Vadnius, who is doing a workshop for us in person at Glen Echo coming up in May, and also Ephraim Rubenstein, who did some work with us already on pastel
I
work.
know Ephraim well.
He was my mentor actually for
Oh my gosh.
all 4 years at MICA. He was my teacher.
Wow.
Yeah, small world, really. I know Susan probably at this point more through all their models that we've shared over the years. But whenever I talk to models, who have just come from Susan's class, they always say what incredible energy she brings to the classroom, and that it's just she bounces from person to person, kind of with this intensity to to her teaching as well as her figure work. So, and I could actually see that in the actual paintings and drawings that you have here. And aside from the working at the Art League, she's also one of the incredible painters featured at Principal Gallery in Alexandria. So if you're after a really beautiful painting, there's some incredible artists who teach, or not, sorry, that exhibit at Principal Gallery. A lot of good friends and alumni, including Christine Lashley, who did our plein air forum actually a year ago today. So, Susan, can you talk a little bit about kind of the bridge between?
Jordan, I really thank you for that introduction. You know, I feel that I've moved through kind of unconventional avenues throughout my whole life, and moving with the Navy, I think that it changed me in ways that actually propelled my career, but it also delayed some things. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It took me to places that I never would have expected. So I don't have the common trajectory of most people. But I first want to thank all of you for inviting me to this online forum, and Nicole and Brian. It's really great to meet you, and all the participants that are coming in. I never expected this kind of opportunity. So thank you for having me. So because of that introduction and where I've been, my experiences are they're varied, and in all the places that I've moved, I've used my education to kind of adapt to where I've lived. I lived in Japan for 3 years. I taught painting in Italy. My husband was a naval officer, and we moved around a lot. But I use this to kind of hone my artistic sensibility. And but most of my early training was, believe it or not, from University of Michigan, was abstract expressionist. That at that time when I was there, that is really what was taught. It was revered as a really amazing art school, but it's different than what's happening in the country right now. But I have to look back and say that I actually am very grateful for that experience, because I see that the narrative and the ideals are shifting toward more realism. And what I've noticed is that even in representational art, if you don't have a sense of the abstract, you're going to lose quality. You know, it's not really in the details of representing light and form, but you have to understand the bigger picture and how things move through space, the figure ground, and how they share this kind of vitality of space, and each becomes important. So again, I think that both these pictures here, they express, you know, I've worked both in oil painting and figure drawing, but I'm always searching for the greater kind of expression that can be universal among the viewers. You know, what can you take from this if you don't really understand art, if you don't understand figure? Where's that line? So I really do straddle that line, which you'll hear over and over again.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Susan. So obviously why we're here is to talk a little bit about our experience with working from the model. So Nicole, tell us what it's like working from the model and why the figure, why the model.
The figure, I think like as all artists, right? You're like, when did you start becoming an artist? And well, I just never stopped, like all kids make. And I think when I was young, that I used art to make, making images as a way to escape, um, and get lost in invented worlds. And the figures made those worlds more tangible, and I could kind of work out things that were like kids play with action figures or whatever to figure out the adult world or the worlds around them. I think I drew um to do that, and the figure became a storytelling tool, and it just has never left. And I've a lot of times find figurative work the most compelling work. Not always, but generally I get super excited like when I go into a museum or gallery and there's really good abstraction in that work and the formal qualities are great, and then there's a figure in it. I get so excited, right? And so I just think I'm driven to do that. And the model, I mean, the model's important. Like I said, I want the figure in there. I'm not at the point where I can invent the figure in a way that I think is convincing. So I need that feedback from the model. I don't prefer to paint from photo reference. The color is weird. It's harder in a way. The drawing's easier, but the color's harder. And that's why I would prefer the figure to be in there. Even my kids, I'll take, because they move all around, right? I'll take a photograph of them so that they can move all around, but I'll have them sit and play video games or whatever, so I can sit and look at the color, even though I have an image reference.
Awesome. Thank you. Susan, why the model?
So first, I just want to say why a model over a photo, and it's very quickly because the a live model offers choices. A photo kind of locks you in to a moment in time, a moment in time. And what I really love about working from life is that when you come up with the final drawing or painting, it's actually a culmination of all those moments. And so that figure should come alive off that paper or that canvas. Um, it offers choices. So every time, usually a human being can only, sit there for about 20 minutes. And when they come back on the stand, um, they're different. Even though you tape them up, you try to get them exact, but there's some difference. Sometimes there's a glint in the eye, um, a difference in a hand and finger position. That finger position, as subtle as it may be, could propel a movement through the pictorial space that you didn't see initially. So I really look forward to those changes in the position as they get back up on the stand. And I think um, there's no substitute for that.
Oh, I
So
like that. I like that.
yeah,
Yeah. You always hear students saying, "Oh, the model moved." Now you're saying, "Oh, embrace
yeah.
that." It could be like the change
No,
of the
yes.
painting.
And I tell that to my students. I say, you know what, listen, guys, I'll walk around the room and I'll say, hey, listen, wait a minute. It's better now. It's better now. Look at that. Look at that shadow shape. Look what it's doing now. See, because a model, they're living. Why do we hire them? They're living. They're going to settle into a pose. The arabesque is going to transform. Um, they are going to become more relaxed. You're going to see more. And you have to be willing to open that. That's why if you start with a gesture first, and I'll just stop with this. If you start with a big gesture first, get the idea down on paper in its in extreme, then you have room to navigate subtlety. Okay?
Fun. Brian, why the model?
For me, it's the surprise. It's that intensity of being in the same space with someone else. I also like the idea of collaboration. When I think about my models, I don't think of them as being passive, but I think of them as being active participants in that final piece. You know, I like the challenge of working from memory, and I do that somewhat. When I can't get what I want, similar to what Nikki was talking about a moment ago, I'll take a photograph. But I don't really like working that way so much. And nothing replaces that intensity for me of standing right in front of someone with all of that shifting around that Susan was just talking about and seeing things that you hadn't expected. I think that act of looking, that negotiation of what you see and what you think you see and what you know and what you think you know ends up being reflected in the piece in the end that becomes much more alive as a piece and an experience for me when you're working from a live model as opposed to other forms. And I might add that's for me. I don't think that everyone has to work from life or should even work from life. But for me, it's certainly the way that I'm most engaged.
Excellent. Brian, could you also walk me through the steps that you take depicting your live models? So, kind of to walk me through your process when you're in the studio.
It depends. If it's going to be something that is sustained or large or complex, I'll oftentimes do drawings anywhere from, the classic sort of thumbnail sketches to something that's much more involved. So I can work out some of those problems before I get to the canvas because I'm quicker with a pencil than I am with a brush. If it's something that's going to be that I feel is going to be a one-shot sort of thing or is fairly simple in format, like a portrait, I'll usually start out with a little bit of charcoal on a white canvas. I usually don't tone my canvas. I kind of moved away from that. I'm not quite sure why I did, but I did. I tend to work on the white canvas now. I'll start out with a little bit of charcoal. And then, I tend to revise a lot. I'll work, I'll scrape off, I'll wipe away. I really tend to revise a lot as I'm working. So as far as building up a complete structure or working directly from a drawing, I don't do that so much because I know that I'm going to change a lot through that process of making.
Excellent. Nicole, can you give us some insight into your process?
So, I paint mostly on unprimed, not unprimed, sorry, sized linen, not with a ground, so that it's just with PVA size, so it's just the color of the linen, unstretched. So my format is flexible, so I can compress that format or open it up, make it larger, and everything happens. There's no preliminary anything. It just all happens on the canvas and adjusts as I go. And like what Brian said, there's a lot of adjustment and changing, and I draw into the the painting a lot with charcoal, not just in the beginning, but all the way through the process. Um,
Wow,
so
that's unique. Yeah, usually you think about people stretching the canvas and going through all the motions of things, but you're kind of just like, we'll see what happens. We'll maybe expand the canvas and contract it as needed.
you learn after you have to sew canvas on and make new stretcher bars that perhaps you need some flexibility.
Why make it harder than it needs to be?
Exactly.
Awesome. Susan, can you give us some information about how you create work?
So I actually I really enjoyed what Nicole just said because that is how I work in all my different media, whether it's charcoal, watercolor, and then ultimately oil. I don't like to constrain my proportions um, because I think the process is more important. You have an initial inspiration, idea, rhythm that guides your eye through the piece. I think in this Actually, I'm looking at, let me see yeah, where are we now? Where's my Zoom call here? Whoops. Yeah, exactly. This picture that you probably know him, it's Desi. A lot of my work is very spontaneous. I don't do a lot of preliminary work. I think I do a lot of my preliminary work in my head, actually.
Mm.
But if I were to do more preliminary work, and I have in the past, and I do sometimes, depending on what the commission is, I will work either in charcoal first because it's very painterly, and then I'll move to watercolor because I can control those edges and then I'll move to the oil. And all of those materials translate to this experience and to what
Are
I
you
want to
talking
show.
about the mediums individually or on the same piece? You're going from
No,
charcoal.
individually, I think between charcoal, watercolor, and then to oil, they become they're smaller studies that help me create kind of a roadmap when I would do the oil. Okay. Um, and again, Jordan and everyone here, I don't always do that. A lot of times I just start right off with the oil and I paint what's in front of me. And but I want room to let that process sing and move beyond the borders. If I do have a border, I really look for a long time and very carefully what it is that I want to depict. I don't just I use my fingers. I don't know if you can see me. I crop it out and I spend a lot of probably spend a couple minutes before I even touch the canvas, really deciding where the essence of this figure will live and what I want to show. And then I'll try to stay true to that, with both the high contrast of um, saturated pigment, subtle value, because the eye will be very responsive to all these decisions that we make. And so I always try to stay true to what my initial inspiration was. In this case, it was right down the center of that portrait, the eye sockets, the nose, and then it's a little diffused. So depending on what I'm working on, I will do some charcoal studies, watercolor, before the oil. I don't know if that is that.
Yeah, totally. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Great. Oh, how do you keep your skills sharp? I know we're all instructors, outside of instructing, or is that all that there is to keep your skills sharp? Susan, you want to start us off?
Yeah, so I attend weekly figure drawing online, I mean, kind of open life sessions, and to force me to kind of experience different lighting situations, different rhythm, speed situations. Sometimes an open life might be multiple quick poses, long pose. If you just stumble into a long pose and the lighting is not what you're used to, you have to pull out something concrete. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge is to when you're faced with something that you go to open life and it's nothing you've ever worked with before. And I think that's huge because you can't just say, "Oh, I this is horrible. I'm leaving." You can't do that. Uh, a lot of times what I do is I actually arrive to the open life session so I get the worst spot because I am forced to deal with what I'm presented with. And you have to. You can pull beautiful artwork out of any situation. I think that's the biggest thing to remember. Um,
That's great. That's great.
yeah.
Brian, what about you? 21 years of figure drawing, right?
A lot of figure drawing. People often ask me if I'm a painter or a printmaker, and I usually say I'm neither, I'm a drawer. I really think of drawing as the root of everything, all visual disciplines. I think it's the most direct form of expression. As an undergraduate, we worked with the figure almost constantly. When I went to graduate school, I ran the open model session there. And ever since I've been at William and Mary, along with Nikki, we run a weekly open model session every Thursday night. So I've been doing that for the last 24 years, every Thursday night. And so we have a model. Sometimes Nikki sets it up, sometimes I set it up, sometimes we've had students set it up. And I think I try to draw all the time whenever I get a chance. I don't get to draw quite every day, but I try to. I try to draw constantly. And it's good for me, for my own practice. I get ideas for things. Occasionally, you'll get a work out of that experience that you feel good about. I think it's also good for the students, though, because they get to see the sort of work ethic that you have to have an artistic practice, and they get to see what a batting average is like. And what I mean about that is that most of mine end up in the garbage. You know, the end of the semester, we usually have about 14 sessions. And if I get 3 good drawings, prints, paintings, whatever I happen to be doing that semester, I feel pretty good about that. And I think that's a little bit of an eye opener to the students.
That's great. Nikki, can you expand upon that? What's it like collaborating with students in a live drawing session?
Oh, it's terrific. It's terrific. Brian's drawings are better than what he's saying. I would say more than three work out, but um, yeah, it's kind of great. It's kind of great to, and even I'll bring it up in class. I'm like, the student's not doing great on a drawing. And I said, look, it's easier for me to come over and tell you how to fix it and do a few moves and make it look better than it is to get to the point you're at in this drawing. Right. And I said, well, watch in the Thursday night sessions. Watch how terrible some of my drawings are. Right. Sometimes I completely bomb most of the time. And that's just how it is. It's just about a daily practice.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, I think this is cool. Oh gosh, this is something I think is. Oh, Marianne, do you want to add something? Sorry.
Yes, I wanted to ask Brian if what we were looking at before was his was a print and commenting on how similar that is to Ephraim's um, pastel of Natalia with a dog. I think he
Oh,
also. Do you notice the similarity? It's so interesting.
This is actually a drawing. It's a relatively large drawing. It's 3 foot by 4 foot. But one of the things that's interesting that you asked about that relationship between printmaking and drawing, I think that most people, including myself, when you start doing printmaking, etching, woodcut, whatever you happen to be doing, they're really influenced by what you've done in drawing. I've done so much printmaking at this point in my life that my drawing looks like a print. When you see it, it kind of looks like a litho.
I think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you. Wow.
likeness versus artistic license. Oh God, this is a tough one for me personally. So I'm interested to hear what you guys think about this. Yeah, go ahead, Nicole. Tell us a little bit about the artistic license in terms of the novel.
Well, I want there to be a likeness, and you strive for it, and it's frustrating when there's not. But I always tell myself, look, when I look at this painting like 10 years from now, it's gonna look exactly like that figure. Like it kind of like first I go for human, and then secondly likeness. I think it's hard enough just to make them look human, but measuring a lot, paying attention to the color. I mean all the basic things you would think, right? Redrawing it, and redrawing it. But if it kind of looks like their cousin or sister, it's okay with I'm okay too.
Susan, what do you think?
So I agree with Nicole. I look for the likeness for an instant because I think that brings the character of the piece and it kind of can propel a work to a kind of an atmospheric and kind of um, a very interesting finish. Okay, but then I abandon it as soon as possible. And what I tell my students is, you know what, do you really need to have that ear in high detail? That's not part of the portrait. I mean, get it in the right place, but what is it that you really want to show? Um, I think to capture a likeness is fleeting and it's a small area, smaller than we think. Um, and if you get those shadow shapes right, it's all about those shadow shapes. And that's where the mindfulness and the um you have to slow down and really look. And you really have to develop those skills to understand shadow shape between like an eye socket and the light on the nose and the nose shape and the mouth. If you can work on recognition of shape recognition, I think that you'll get the likeness. But then you abandon it for what you really want to say. How much of that do you really want to say is this person? I work with a lot of models that I know. I don't really want the portrait to be them. I want it to kind of rise above and to be kind of universal and describe kind of a figure in space. In this case, this figure had leaves on her head, and it was a very singular moment, and I did love the face, but I do want the shoulders and whatnot to kind of dissolve. I don't want that to be the focus. So you really have to make some mindful decisions.
Cool. Brian, what do you think?
I think all of us want a likeness, but it's something that I try to push way on the back burner as far as a concern goes. For one thing, as soon as you worry about a likeness, you've guaranteed that you'll never get one because you're not painting or drawing anymore. You're thinking about a likeness. You're not thinking about shape and relationship. I mean, what I'm really for, anyways, is that experience and presence of the person much more so than a photographic likeness, that everyone seems to want. Like I look at this image right here, this is my daughter Gabriel on her 15th birthday. And while I think you would probably, if you knew Gabriel and you saw this, you would recognize it's her. It's not a dead likeness, but I think it's a dead feeling of her, what it's like to be around her. And really, that's much more what I'm interested in than worrying about likeness.
Excellent. So we talk about the model a lot as just the inspiration for the actual work. Do you believe in the idea of the muse, Susan?
I do believe in the idea of a muse in that, you encounter a figure that really inspires you by their individual character and what they kind of the energy that they exude and put across, and sometimes you feel like you can't get enough of it with just a few maybe gestures, a few sketches, and you want to uh, um move into that further and see what you can pull out of that. So I do have several muses that I've worked with over the years that I've worked with for a long time. You may know Sheba. Of course, we're in the same community. I did many, many drawings of her, and I had a solo show, and probably 80% of my drawings were of Sheba. But everyone was different, and what I was really looking at is kind of the atmospheric placement of the figure in space, and that figure ground kind of connection, how they're woven together, and move the viewer. So you capture maybe one part of the figure that you're really interested in. In a particular case, it was her hands and her face, which were very close to each other, and then I moved out from there, and that ended up being the image for the postcard. It was very exciting, and now it's been purchased and it's gone, and I don't have it anymore. But I do think a muse is important because you can work through your kind of your vision and exhaust maybe what this person can offer in spirit. I
Cool. Brian, what do you think? I see the same little boy popping up a couple times. Does recurring characters play a role in your work?
Yeah, that's my son James, who I constantly coerce against his better judgment into modeling for me. I'm most interested in working from the people and places that I know best. I always think of that James Joyce quote when they asked him why he was always writing about Dublin. And he said, the particulars contain the universal. That idea of being really specific. By being specific, you hit the universal. If you're aiming for the universal, I think that oftentimes you miss it. And so I found that I have a small number of people, like my children, James right here, my daughter, myself, that I work for a long time because I feel like I really know them. And as I said earlier, I want someone who's a collaborator, someone who understands what I'm doing and is after that same goal. And I tend to find people who are willing to do that and return to them again and again.
Nicole, what do you think?
Mine's kind of similar to Brian's in that I'm using the people that are around me. I mean, can a muse even be an idea? Maybe. Um, like I mean like an idea, like a continued narrative in a way. But I think my muses, there's more than one, right? Are the people around me. And sometimes I think what I'm saying is, can it be an idea? Sometimes I'll use other figures to stand in for myself. Like this was an old roommate of mine in this image that's up here, and I was using her as a stand-in for myself. Um, the kids, this is an invented figure in the back. The baby's completely invented. And maybe it was like a stand-in for, I didn't have a child at the time, but it was like a stand-in for that person that was going to take over that place at some point. Um, I don't know. I think this is a hard one, but I think the muse is an idea of a person or some people, for at least for me. Um, and they recur, yes.
Uh, well, I already kind of know the answer for this one for you, Nicole. But can you talk a little bit about the abstraction, the push and pull between reality and abstraction? Where
Yeah,
are you on the abstract and representational spectrum?
right. So, the abstraction leads. Like I think in terms of the designing of the picture plane, and like I tell my students this all the time. Like when we start figure drawing, the first week or two is on composition, and then I move to gesture. Like I often do composition before gesture, just because it's like the first and foremost, you're responsible for designing this picture plane, and we're gonna work representationally in this class, and I don't want you to think a well modeled or well rendered figure is a good drawing. It's not, right? So that always leads. And yeah, I want my images to be representational, but I also want this underlying design to be there. So like maybe in in this one, you know, there was a lot of times I'll take my works and I'll take photographs of them and I'll take them into Photoshop, or I'll take them into Procreate, or sometimes I even just print them out in different sizes and I'll cut and paste and move them around. I'll think about, like, I couldn't decide on the background for this one. I couldn't decide on the color of the napkins, so I would go in and change the colors around. I'd move the cakes around. I didn't have a green lollipop, but I needed that green in there. So like, what happens if the lollipop's green? What happens if the napkins are a teal color? And I don't know which leads. They're probably equal. It's a back and forth. Does that answer the question? Did I answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, abstractly through other things too.
Yeah.
Susan, you talked a little bit about the idea that you started as an abstract expressionist. Do you still kind of feel like that abstract quality is embedded in your practice at all?
Absolutely. I push pull is something, those are probably the first few words I ever heard in my art education. I studied with an instructor this is all we heard about was push pull. So it's that always that figure ground and that edge. And I had some really interesting early mentors that I worked with in figure drawing and both this idea of abstraction. And I find that my figures fall always, they straddle that line. And I think that in this day, so I'm kind of addressing what we're all doing today. We want to get better at. There's this representational figure that's been really predominant. I actually since like maybe 2000, and I have to be honest, I have not lived in this country a lot since then. So it kind of surprised me, but it was. I wish I had had this when I was studying, because the figure was not anything that anybody talked about. But I did have a very instrumental instructor that pushed it, and we worked large and we worked with energy. And I think we worked on the figure through kind of abstract expressional ideas. And so when I look at this one that is actually on your screen, I think it kind of culminates what I love, both the highly articulate understanding of anatomy in one area, and then the abstract expressionist. So what I look at when I do a piece is both these smudges, these lines where they stop. I can't annotate, I don't think, because I don't have control. But everything kind of keeps pulling the eye around. So like where a line may stop, and the same with what Nicole was saying. You know, I really, really am very highly sensitive about this idea of composition. And I, like her, uh, maybe a different path. I force gesture on the students first to apply the extremes to where the composition will lie, and then focus from there. Um, two ideas in the same path. So I think that's so important. You know, I think that if we follow some courses today, we forget about that ground, that background, and how the figure lies in space. So push pull is this is something that Cezanne used all the time. It was my first words of understanding. So again, anyway, sorry for if I went too long.
No, it's good. Brian, can you talk a little bit about, kind of the ideas of abstraction in your work?
Sounds like Susan and I had some of the same teachers or some of the
I
same
hope so,
generation of
Brian.
teachers. Although a lot of mine had come out of abstract expressionism and then went back to the figure. And so that idea of abstraction was always present. And, like I said earlier, it was a revelation to me when one day I finally understood that everyone's an abstract artist. It's never going to be that thing. And as soon as you put that mark on that page or that plate or that piece of paper, you're dealing with abstract language. And that's what makes it that engagement with that picture plane, that engagement with the materials, that engagement with the process that's separate from what you can name is what gives that piece its resonance. It's the difference between that portrait or figure that you remember and the one that you don't. It's not what you can name, it's what the person did with it. And I think as soon as you start, you have to be totally engaged with that. And it's something that, I know that I talk to my students about all the time because everyone in the beginning is only concerned about what they can name and what they can say. And it's like, how do you push back that?
Great. Oh, I know all of you do other things besides figurative work, but I was interested in just how that affects your figurative work. Like how, Brian, this is obviously a landscape. How does working from the landscape affect how you approach the figure?
I think other genre, definitely feel as though I'm a figurative artist, but other genres have influenced me a lot. Um, I remember when I was in graduate school, I won a residency at the Vermont Studio Center, and I had been painting this series of meat still lifes. I brought my little refrigerator, and I was going to do these meat still lifes. And I got there, and our visiting critic, Bernie Chait, really forced me to go outside and paint the landscape. And I had zero interest in doing that. I didn't want to do it at all, but he wouldn't leave me alone until I did it. And so I did. And it just opened up painting for me for a lot of different reasons. I think painting the landscape didn't have that same sort of subject content importance at the time that the figure did for me. And I think in some ways it was stopping me from painting. And when I do the landscape, even now, and I return to it at least once a year for, a variety of amount of time, I'm just painting. I'm not thinking about all of those other things I tend to think about with the figure, although truthfully, some of that starts to work its way into the landscape paintings as well. But I feel freer to change, I think, sometimes into paint when I'm doing the landscape than I'm doing the figure.
Well, when you are working in another subject matter, like how do you think about the figure when you're working in a still life and vice versa, or is it kind of streamlined?
I do think about the figure, where is that viewpoint in the landscape, for instance? How am I placing the viewer within it? Am I depicting something that has been shaped by the figure, or is I depicting something that's void of the figure? And so even though I say that those things are somewhat removed when I'm painting the landscape, they tend to maybe they're not up front in the same way that they are with the figure, but those concerns are still there.
It's almost like you're telling a story about the impact of the figure on the subject that you're
Yeah,
painting. Yeah.
that's right. Or the absence of the figure in that space.
Nicole, is there an absence of figure in this? That's a good lead way into that.
Present as absent. I want the figure to feel just outside of that still life. So when I'm painting the still lives, I'm still thinking about the figure being right outside, or the viewer becoming a participatory, discovering, coming upon this and wondering and putting the pieces together like a mystery novel. And also I won't go into the stories and things behind it, but the objects start to become characters and represent, like I was talking about, can mousse be an idea? Like the coffee cup is me, the inhalers my son, the cigarettes and or my dad. So these characters repeat themselves, and in my head are telling a story that's probably pretty specific and not obvious to the viewer. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Susan, this is almost a departure, it looks like, for you
Yeah,
for it's almost a little Art Nouveau.
yeah, it is a departure, and I want to, and so I really am excited to even talk about this. So, for one thing, I have to say, in a very odd way, Nicole, I know these are completely different subject matters, but when I look at this is a material I've never used before, gold watercolor, gouache into this figure, definitely inspired by design, by Alphonse Mucha. And by the way, there's an amazing Alphonse Mucha show coming to the Phillips collection that opened yesterday. And apparently it's worth really seeing. So for any of you that don't know, you should go. But my inspiration with Alphonse Mucha was beyond that. I'm not. He's very stylized. I don't work that way, but I did like some of his figures and how like graphic novels distill the figure and what marks they choose to make prominent and what they don't. Even graphic novels, it's more commercial, but they still have to find a hierarchy and a design in their mark making to pull the eye through and make it appealing. And so that was kind of my motivation behind this piece. And so if you look at the gold, very much like what Nicole is doing, the eye follows where the gold is not, where the gold has texture, where the gold has I movement, and hopefully directs you back toward the figure. If I could annotate this, I could show you the path I mean. And actually, I didn't realize just this moment that the path that I see in this picture is very much like the exact path that Nicole has in her work. It comes down from the upper right, it goes down through the middle, crosses over to the bottom, and then up again to that portrait. So this is where I lie. I love abstraction in all the forms it can take. And so when you talk about exploring the different genres, to answer that question, which I feel like I haven't done yet, in anything that I do, I apply the arabesque, I apply the movement of how the eye moves through a landscape, still life, figure. I think they are all the same. So I teach all of this in my classes, and I get a little bit, how do I say? I want people to understand that when I bring the figure as the subject, it's no different than what we did in still life. It's no different than what we did in landscape. You have to apply the same principles of design to anything you're looking at. You have to go to where your eye loves the most and then move out from there and find these lines of arabesque, these lines of continuity, and It's very important. So I think this is why art lasts through the centuries, because there's so many depictions of it. I mean, the fact that I can look at Nicole's and Brian's and say mine falls in the same pictorial rhythmic category is blows my mind. But I feel that. So
I totally planned that when I was arranging these images, guys. Like totally, of course. And just a brief kind of question for you guys, because I know we're occupying more time than we probably should. And I know Nicole talks a lot about her influences in her artist talk from last year, and I encourage you all to go check that out for a longer abridged than this abridged version. But Nicole, can you talk briefly about, your influ or a piece like this that really just changed the way you thought about art or changed your practices?
You're right. I could go on forever, but I won't here. So, Pompeii Villa of Mysteries, brief explanation. Initiation rites into womanhood. It's like a modern day comic strip. It's freaking brilliant. Love this painting so much. I love the red, the being in the space with the figures. The figures are larger than life. It goes around this entire room and you're enveloped in the story. The story is what leads for me and my work. And so you can watch the talk and I go into it more deeply, but the recurring figures, super exciting.
Susan, talk a little bit about Diebenkorn here.
yeah, Diebenkorn was an early influence that just rocked my world. The way he can create a figure in a very abstract way, because this is what my training was at the time, but also not make it only, obvious that it's a figure, but incorporate it with the space. And so if you look at this, you can find many multiple paths. The way her sandal touches the leg of the chair, brings your eye up. The knee is in line with that background gray. Your eye has many venues to explore this figure. And a show that I saw in a long time ago, I won't even say the year because it's going to really say a lot about my age, but it just changed my perspective on everything. And I didn't put this in here, but Degas, his multiple figured, very realistic compositions, they also have a very profound way to guide the viewer's eye through. It's not by accident. So if you look at Degas' dancers with the ballerinas on stage with like maybe 15 figures on stage, and how he organizes that space, it's very much to me like a Diebenkorn. And it left a profound effect on me in my early years of training.
Ryan, why Rembrandt?
The nun who taught our catechism for First Communion had this pasted to the front of her desk. And so my brother and I would go every Saturday morning for our religious instruction before First Communion. There was a room full of religious imagery, and this is the one that I sat in front of. And it was like a black sun. It would draw me in every single time I went to it. And what's interesting, of course, is there was a room full of imagery of almost the same imagery of crucifixions and nativities and things like that. But this is the one I couldn't take my eyes off of long before I knew what printmaking or who Rembrandt was or anything. I always remember this image.
I love that. I love that. Oh, this is the question I was always waiting to sell. It's our last question for you guys. But any tips on selling these paintings that are of people? Like, I mean, unless you are the subject matter or it's a commission, what do you do with these paintings? Susan?
Yeah, so this was the big question of the day. This was probably the hardest one that I had to answer. So I didn't know whether you meant literal or not.
Either way is fine. I'm good with
Yeah, so
that.
I'm going to answer it literal. As far as selling, this is where I wish I had a marketing degree, because I am really needing in this area of the marketing side. But as far as the literal image, I think if you want to sell a portrait, I think if your image is too literal, like a portrait or a figure, why are people going to buy that? So you have to understand what might appeal to people. And I think it has to be something kind of more universal, um, something the viewer can take part in and finish or understand. And so I try to push these figures in a way that they don't, they're not a portrait. Um, give the viewer something, but then let them go a little bit so that they can discover their own. So what I really find in my drawings is that, or my paintings, is I want to give them some kind of movement and life and something that is beautiful to everyone. We all love light and color, even if it's subtle. Give them something to move around with, and then let the background and the atmosphere create another world that maybe they can circulate. Um, and I just want to say that the way I would end this, and this is something that has driven me through my entire career, is a quote by Paul Klee, which I actually learned when I was very young in university, is make visible the invisible. And sometimes when we give the viewer too much, they become bored. Give them a little, give them less, give them something. Maybe like in this case, a back, a scapula, a hand, and then let them discover a little bit more. Is she at a table? Is she, where is this figure in space? What is she doing? Let them take something away from it. So I think that can sell a piece if they can take something away.
Thank you. Nicole, how do I get all these figure paintings out of my basement?
Hell if I know. I mean, I'm the wrong person to ask here. I think Susan like hit it on the just the nail on the head. But it's funny that you put this one up because this one was stolen from a gallery and the
I'm telling
gallery denies it, so I didn't get insurance. So if anyone sees this painting anywhere, let me know. Let me know. I think what Susan said is not answering all the questions for the viewer. I'm always really shocked when someone, it doesn't happen very often, which is why I'm shocked, when someone buys a painting, especially one that has a figure in it. I mean that's why I have a day job, so I can paint whatever I want. And not worry about selling. So I'm so sorry. I'm such the wrong person to ask, but I do think it has something with not overstating the message in the painting.
Yeah, kind of like there's a fine line between making it representational and abstract, so it could kind of go in any different little category there. Yeah. Maria, did you want to throw something
Yeah,
in there?
my husband says one of my favorite prints was stolen from a little show that we had, group show that I had, and he claims that if it's stolen, that means someone really liked it, so it's equivalent to a sale.
Yeah, it's good if it got stolen because somebody needed it. Brian, any tips on selling these incredible paintings that are very specific sometimes?
No great tips. No great tips. Uh,
Ow.
I have I have racks full of them, like you were just talking about. Not too much to add on what Susan and Nikki said. For me, I just worry about trying to make the best painting or print that I can and put it out in the world. And if someone buys it, great. And if not, it'll be in storage with all the others.
Thank you guys so much for this. This has been pretty incredible. I'd like to, if you don't have we have a couple more minutes just to open it up to the people of the MAA and see if they have any questions. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask questions if you don't mind. Anybody?
People are saying what a great session, and thank you for accepting the invitation just from the chat.
Oh, okay.
I have a question based on what Brian just said. What do you do about storage of all of your work?
1 second.
There you
Yeah,
go.
they I mean, I think storage, as you know, you make paintings over decades, it becomes an issue. It really is. Interestingly enough, I just threw away a bunch of paintings and someone fished them out of the dumpster and brought them to restore. And so, you get this situation of what to do with them, and you end up being kind of ruthless about what you're going to keep and what you're not in the end. That's always an issue.
Great. Any other
You know,
suggestions on storage
can
for the
I
panel?
add one more thing that recently came up to me, and I'm not sure. I hope I'm addressing the same question. I worry about, we do all this work that is very precious to us, and we keep it, and we decide when we want to let it go, whether it's via online selling or uh, a show, but we have so much abundance of work. Um, Recently, I have to say, helping the Art League move out of their spaces, it's been, it's been, I don't even have the right words. It's been very unsettling to see the bulk of work that people have given the Art League in Alexandria actually to then use like in their patron shows and whatnot. And these members are now past. And there's so much of it. And and it was highly emotional for me to see work from like the 80s and 90s, multiple prints of very beautiful work that is just now going to go down. What they're going to level this building, and it's going to be part of high-end condominiums. It's going to go down with the ship. So my point is let it out there. You know what? If you have a way to put it on your website, let it out there. Art is worth what people will pay for it at the time, and what the genre is at the time. So you may not think it's worthy, but put it out there because somebody may want it. And it's going to hang on someone's wall. It'll be passed down to their children's children. It'll be out there. Otherwise, it's going to be in your drawer, and it may go down with a ship. Like a lot of this artwork is going down at the Art League. And I don't mean to be passionate about it, but it really affected me because I do the same thing. I have saved a lot of work that I do until I can figure out what I do. What if I pass tomorrow, it's gone. So I don't mean to post this negative, but get your work out there. You never know who's going to really love it. And anyway, that's it.
So would you say to donate it or to set it up for auction for a very
I
low
don't know.
price?
I think we need to. I don't know. I am not the expert on this. There's a lot of venues with online. I am not the one. I don't want to be the center of focus with this, but like Instagram, maybe your website, just get it out there. Look for so even like the Art League in Alexandria, they have you can put like a gallery of work in a bin with your name on it. You can like maybe put a mat on it and put it in kind of cellophane and put a price on it and just get it out there. You know what? If your work can hang on somebody's wall and they end up loving it, it's case by case. Everyone is going to identify and love a certain piece of work.
Yeah, cool. Any other questions? I have a quick one for everybody. Flake white or titanium white?
Titanium.
Oh, gasp.
It's
Does anyone use flake
cheaper.
white anymore?
Isn't flake white lead?
Yeah.
Yeah, but whatever. I mean, we paint with cadmium and cobalt. I ate cadmium orange yesterday on accident. But I mean, flake isn't as strong. You have to use more. I like that you don't have to use as much titanium. It's like more powerful.
Amboy makes a nice replacement for it, their flake replacement. And it's like painting with taffy or something. It's so thick.
What
It's
is
kind of
it?
worse for skin. Gamboing makes a flake replacement. So
Oh,
it
and
has the
it's
same
stringy.
qualities, but it's not lead. And it's just super stiff. And
I like that goopiness, the goopiness and stringiness of lead. Like that's
Yeah.
delicious. It really is. But
Nicole, have you tried natural pigments, lead white #2?
natural pigments, is that the name of the brand?
So the company is Natural Pigments, and
Okay.
they have 2 lead whites, and you want #2. It's very stringy and gooey, and it's wonderful.
Okay.
Is it real lead, Susan?
Yeah, it is, and they go through the traditional processing of this, and it's so you have to understand what you're working with, but it gives you some really eccentric qualities in those lights. So go to naturalpigments.com.
Okay. Like number
And
two.
look, they have 2 lead whites, #1 and #2. #2 is more stringy.
It's, people freak out about the lead, but we're using chromium and
Yeah, that's
cadmium and
right.
all. I mean,
Don't need it.
As
yeah,
long as you
don't
wear
drag your
gloves and you're
through it.
very careful that you're not eating your lunch.
Timothy
Wear
has
gloves.
a raised hand.
Go ahead, Timothy.
Sorry, I was looking for the mute button. Yeah, this is Tim Williamson. I just wanted to chime in. I took Susan's class before the
Tim!
pandemic. Yeah, hi. Susan, I just wanted to tell you, you guys were talking about selling figure paintings. I've sold 2 figure drawings so far in my life, and one of them was made in your class with your help.
Oh,
So just wanted to say thank you. It was a great class.
well, I'm very humbled. And Tim, I remember you.
Oh,
I always
cool.
think about you, actually.
Oh, wow, okay. Yeah, I'm still working with Gavin now because it's
Ah,
closer to me than Art League. But yeah, appreciate the talk, guys. Thanks for coming out.
Thanks for joining us.
thank you. Thank you,
Mhm.
Tim.
Yeah.
Any final questions so we can let our panel finally get back to their busy weekend of painting, I'm sure, and not stretching canvases? That
Maybe
just
we
boggles
can,
my mind. I've been like last week, I've been building panels that are very specific sizes, and I have all the sizes in case I need a long one or a square one. And then Nicole's like, "No, I'm just gonna go on a canvas."
Yeah, you stretch it later.
Oh,
Even, I mean, the panels are cut, right? But sometimes I'll paint on paper and then decide, and then you can
yeah,
paste it to the panel,
that's what I do too.
cut the panel to the side. Yeah.
yeah. All right, final
Many,
questions.
many
Synthetic
thanks from
brushes
everyone.
or natural hair brushes?
Both.
Both.
I think it depends on what you're doing.
If I said the house is on or your studio's on fire, you have to grab one or the other to paint with for the rest of your life. Maybe it's not
Natural.
on fire. Oh, that's a bad idea. But maybe you just have to paint with one for the rest of your life.
Natural.
I think natural.
One hanging on the wall in Susan's studio.
Yeah, the
You
giant.
know, I forget those are there, and everybody comments about them.
Well, I want to thank everybody for being here today. This is really exciting, and your guys' answers to my ridiculous questions at times were pretty awesome. So thank you for joining us. In 2 weeks, we have Corey Orbendorf. I hope I'm saying his last name correctly. Coming in again, printmaker, sculpture, and his work is just so whimsical and delightful. Like it's just a fun experience talking to Corey. So I encourage you all to come back in 2 weeks for Corey's talk. I think Lenny Campello, he says, oh, I'll be there to introduce him if I get reminded. So I'll do my best to remind Lenny to show up. Lenny is Lenny, so you have to kind of poke him sometimes. But it should be a lot of fun. So I encourage you all to come back in 2 weeks and join us for that. And again, check out our archive of we're over like 40 people at this time, Mariana. Can you believe it?
Yeah, I can't.
Oh, it's so exciting. So go spend some hours learning about the artists in the DMV area. We have some really incredibly talented people here, and we made this program to make sure that everyone knows about who they are. But again, come back anytime. Anything else to add, Mariana?
Maybe we can do a follow-up in a year or so. I would love to.
Absolutely.
This
Thanks
was
again to
great.
Montgomery Art Association for sponsoring our event today, and we'll see you in
Amazing.
2 weeks.
And hopefully the video will be there in a couple days. It will be in our archive. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Montgomery Art
Many.
Association. You're the
Oh,
best.
share
Thank you
the
so
link.
much.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Susan. Thank
Jordan.
you, Brian. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, everyone.